I should have known something was off the moment I saw Karen strutting around the neighborhood with an unusual level of smugness. Now, don't get me wrong, our HOA president, Karen, was always smug. It was practically her default setting. But today, she had an extra bounce in her step, the kind that screamed, "I just did something absolutely horrendous, and no one can stop me." I had no idea that horrendous meant turning my house into her personal party venue. It all started when I came back from my week-long business trip. I pulled into my driveway, exhausted, dreaming of a long shower and an even longer nap. But instead of silence, I was greeted by flashing lights, deafening music, and a front yard that looked like it had been invaded by a frat house from hell. Strangers were sprawled across my lawn, red cups littered the ground, and someone, I kid you not, was grilling steaks on my porch using my barbecue grill. I slammed my car door and marched toward my front door, only to find it wide open. Wide open. I stepped inside, and my brain short-circuited. My house, my sacred space, was filled with rowdy guests. People were laughing, spilling drinks on my furniture, and some guy was actually dancing on my coffee table. The audacity! And then, there she was, the devil in yoga pants Karen. She stood in the middle of my living room, a martini in hand, laughing like she owned the place. "Oh, you're back early," she said, barely looking at me. I stared at her, stunned. Back early? As if my own return to my own house was an inconvenience. "What the hell is going on here?" I roared. Karen sighed dramatically, setting down her drink as if I had rudely interrupted her fun. "Relax, it's just a little get-together. I needed a bigger venue, and since your house was empty, I thought, why let it go to waste?" My eye twitched. "You thought my house was empty?" "Karen, it's my house. You can't just—" "Oh, don't be such a buzzkill," she scoffed. "It's just one night. It's for the community, after all. You should be thanking me for bringing people together." My left eye twitched this time. I was so mad, I could barely form words. "Get out. Now." Karen rolled her eyes. "The night's still young. We'll be done in a few hours." That's when I noticed something. A small, devious, wonderful thought bloomed in my mind as I glanced at the stove, the candles scattered around, and the overly enthusiastic guy tossing beer bottles dangerously close to my carpet. Karen wanted a party? Oh, she was going to get one. And by the end of it, this house, my house, would be nothing but ashes. I took a deep breath, forcing a smile as Karen clinked her martini glass against some guy's beer bottle. It was time to play the long game. "All right, Karen," I said, my voice unusually calm. "You're right. I have been a buzzkill. Maybe I should let loose a little." Karen arched an eyebrow, clearly suspicious. "Well, that's the spirit." I stepped inside, pretending to take in the festivities like some appreciative host. In reality, I was mentally cataloging all the ways I could ensure this party went down in flames, literally. First, I needed fuel. The kitchen was already a disaster zone. Someone had dumped an entire bag of popcorn into my sink, and my fridge was wide open, with half-eaten slices of pizza scattered inside like some crime scene. But then I saw the jackpot: my stove. I turned the gas knob, just enough to start a leak but not enough to make it obvious. Step 1, complete. Next, I strolled to my bookshelf, where some genius had left a stack of napkins dangerously close to a scented candle. I nudged them closer casually, of course. The flames flickered, licking the edge of the paper. I wandered back into the living room, acting like I was finally embracing the party. A drunk guy slumped against my couch, half awake. "Bro, you got any more beer?" "You know what I do," I said, forcing a grin. "Check the pantry. Just watch your step. The floor's kinda slippery in there." The guy staggered toward the kitchen. A minute later, I heard the unmistakable sound of someone tripping and knocking over my spice rack. Not ideal, but hey, small sacrifices. Meanwhile, Karen was too busy holding court in the middle of the room. She was ranting about the importance of HOA regulations and how she single-handedly saved the neighborhood from degenerates who think they can park wherever they want. I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. Oh, Karen. She had no idea she was about to host the grandest HOA disaster in history. A loud pop came from the kitchen, followed by a shout. The drunk guy had apparently knocked over a pot, and it clanged to the floor. People barely reacted, too drunk to care. Perfect. Now for the final touch. I strolled to the back, where Karen had set up a ridiculous fire pit using my own grill. The flames flickered lazily under a pile of logs. I grabbed a bottle of Karen's fancy tequila because of course she brought her own and, with an innocent whistle, poured a generous amount onto the flames. The fire crackled, then flared up big time. The drunk partygoers owed and awed, oblivious to the fact that my house was seconds away from turning into a fireworks show. Karen finally noticed something was wrong when someone screamed, "Hey! The couch is on fire." She whipped around. What? Sure enough, the napkins had done their job. A small flame danced across the armrest. People stumbled away, but no one really did anything until my carefully planted chaos hit its climax. Boom! The stove let out a sharp blast, shaking the entire house. Someone in the kitchen shrieked. Flames licked up the curtains, smoke curled toward the ceiling, and in the middle of it all, Karen shrieked like a banshee. "Oh my God! Fire! Fire!" she screamed, flailing uselessly. The guests, previously lost in a drunken haze, suddenly gained Olympic-level reflexes and sprinted for the exits. Cups, bottles, and plates crashed to the floor as people trampled over each other, desperate to escape. And me? I stood there, hands in my pockets, watching the house Karen stole for her party ignite into a spectacular blaze. Karen grabbed my arm, her eyes wild. "Do something." I shrugged. "What? This is your party, Karen. You handle it." She let out a strangled screech, then bolted outside with the rest of the panicked mob. As I stepped into the night, watching flames devour my former home, I couldn't help but smile. This was going exactly as planned. Outside, chaos reigned. The partygoers, still in various states of drunkenness, stumbled around my yard like panicked toddlers. Some tried to call 911, but their fingers fumbled over their phones. Others just stood there, slack-jawed, watching the flames turn my house into a glowing bonfire. And then there was Karen. She was in full meltdown mode, pacing in circles, flapping her arms, and shrieking like a seagull that had just lost its lunch. "This is unacceptable. The HOA will not stand for this," she wailed. I turned to her, barely suppressing my grin. "Karen, I am the HOA. This is my house. You're the one who turned it into a nightclub. So technically, you won't stand for this." Her eyes nearly popped out of her head. "You did this on purpose. I know you did." I gasped in mock offense. Me? Karen, how dare you accuse me of such a thing? I was just trying to enjoy my totally unexpected welcome home party. Before she could launch into another screeching fit, a loud siren cut through the night. The fire department had arrived, big red trucks rolling onto my street, lights flashing like an over-the-top Christmas display. Firefighters jumped out, already barking orders. One of them, a tall, serious-looking guy, walked up to me. "You the homeowner?" I nodded. Was. His face barely flickered at my sarcasm. "What happened?" I gestured toward Karen. "Oh, you should ask her. She threw a massive HOA-sanctioned rager in my house while I was gone. Apparently, she thought property laws were optional. Now, look where that got her." Karen gasped. "That's a lie." The firefighter turned to her. "Ma'am, are you saying this wasn't your party?" Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Then, as if on cue, a half-conscious party-goer sitting on my lawn hiccuped and mumbled, "Best HOA party ever," before passing out. The firefighter's eyes narrowed. "Ma'am, you hosted a party in someone else's house without their permission." Karen went pale. I was just. I folded my arms, watching her flail like a trapped fish. "Karen, why don't you tell the nice firefighter how you saved the community by throwing a completely unauthorized event in a house that wasn't yours?" That's not I," she stammered, but she was toast, and she knew it. Before she could dig her hole any deeper, another fireman walked up. "Sir, we need to talk. Your gas line was tampered with." "That's likely what caused the explosion." Karen's face lit up like she just found a lifeline. "See? I told you he did this on purpose. He's trying to frame me." The firefighter gave her an unamused look. "Ma'am, you were illegally inside his house throwing a party. The gas leak could have been a hazard waiting to happen. Either way, you're trespassing." Karen's lips clamped shut. I couldn't resist twisting the knife. "Oh, Karen, don't look so shocked. Didn't you always say rules are rules?" "Well, I believe there's a very strict rule about not breaking into someone else's house and setting it on fire." The fireman sighed and spoke into his radio. A few moments later, 2 police officers arrived, stepping out of their squad car like they were about to have the easiest arrest of their careers. Karen's expression twisted into a wild mix of outrage and desperation. "No. No, you can't arrest me. I'm the HOA president. I have power." One of the cops pulled out his notepad. "And I'm sure the judge is really gonna care about that, lady." As they started reading her rights, Karen did what any respectable HOA dictator would do. She threw a full-blown tantrum. "You can't do this. I'm the victim here." "He burned down his own house," she shrieked, pointing wildly at me. "Arrest him." The cop didn't even blink. "Ma'am, you're being charged with trespassing, property damage, and reckless endangerment. If you have complaints, you can bring them up in court." Karen screamed, her voice reaching a new level of banshee. "You don't understand. I run this neighborhood. I am the law." As if to shut her up, one of the officers clicked the handcuffs around her wrists. Karen gasped, horrified. "You can't arrest me. I have rights." The cop sighed. Yeah, and you have the right to remain silent. Might wanna use it?" As they dragged her toward the squad car, I casually waved. "Bye, Karen." Hope you enjoy your new gated community. She screamed in rage, but the car door slammed shut, muffling her cries. Meanwhile, the fire department had finally gotten the flames under control. My house was officially a charred ruin. But honestly, I wasn't even mad. Watching Karen get hauled off in cuffs was worth every piece of furniture that went up in flames. Besides, I had one last surprise in store. Because while Karen had been busy planning her little unauthorized party, I had been busy planning something else, something that would make sure her whole reign of terror ended permanently. And I couldn't wait to watch it unfold. The fire was mostly out by the time the officers hauled Karen away, but my house was barely recognizable. Charred furniture, scorched walls, and the lingering scent of burnt wood, my personal sanctuary, had turned into a cautionary tale. But Karen? She had just handed me the perfect opportunity to take her down once and for all. While the firemen finished up their work and the last of the police officers wrapped things up with Karen's increasingly pathetic pleas for help, I started making a few calls of my own. The first call was to my insurance agent. I had coverage, of course, but it wasn't the house I was worried about, it was Karen. I was going to make sure she'd pay for every penny of this. "Hello, Mr. Hendricks, it's me. I need to file a claim," I said in my best business-like tone. "And while we're at it, let's add in a liability waiver clause for this fire. No one could have predicted how spontaneously that gas leak ignited." There was a brief pause on the other end. "You think this was arson?" "Not just any arson," I said. "Homeowner Association sponsored arson." Mr. Hendricks laughed. "All right, we'll take care of the details. We'll send someone out for an assessment." I smiled as I hung up. Everything was falling into place. Then, I made my second call to my lawyer. "You wouldn't believe the day I've had," I said, already planning my attack. "I need a suit filed against the HOA, specifically Karen, for trespassing, property damage, public endangerment. And I'm thinking we add a personal injury claim. I've got a few bumps and bruises from trying to navigate this disaster. Oh, and if you can manage to squeeze in defamation somewhere, that'd be great." My lawyer's voice turned from polite curiosity to full-on enthusiasm. "You want to sue her personally?" "I'm taking her down with everything I've got," I said. "I want her in the dirt, with no HOA to back her up. We need to hit her hard." I could almost hear him grinning on the other end. "Consider it done." With those calls taken care of, I walked down the driveway, surveying the damage. The fire had done its job, but Karen's influence was still strong in the neighborhood. People were already whispering that she'd be back, that she'd find a way to wiggle out of this. But Karen had made one fatal mistake: she didn't know who she was dealing with. As the police car carrying Karen drove away, I saw a familiar face approaching. It was Mike, my next-door neighbor. He was one of the few people in the neighborhood who had actually been on my side when Karen started her reign of terror. "You good, man?" Mike asked, eyeing the smoldering remains of my house. "Better than ever," I said with a grin. "The insurance will cover the house, but what matters is what happens next. Karen's days as HOA president are numbered." Mike raised an eyebrow. "You got something up your sleeve?" I nodded. "I've got her cornered. Not only is she getting sued into oblivion, but the HOA will have no choice but to kick her out after this. I'm going to make sure she's banned from ever holding office again. And when I'm done, I'll be the one running the HOA." Mike let out a low whistle. "Damn, you've got it all figured out." I'm just getting started, I said, watching as the last of the firefighters packed up their equipment. In the distance, I could see Karen, now out of the police car, talking to another officer. She was frantic, trying to explain that she was just a victim of my overreaction to her kindly suggestion. It was laughable. But it was also perfect. Because what Karen didn't know was that I had already reached out to a few neighbors who had been fed up with her antics for years. People who'd had their grass fined for being a fraction too tall or their mailboxes fined for not having the right shade of beige. These were the people who were ready for change, and they were going to help me take her down. And it wouldn't stop with Karen. Once I became the new HOA president, I was going to rewrite every rule she'd made, starting with no more parties in anyone's house unless it's an HOA-approved event. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw a text from an unknown number. "You're not getting away with this," it read. "The HOA stands behind me. You'll see." I chuckled. It was Karen, sending her last desperate threats from the back of the police car. I sent her a reply, "See you in court, Karen." And the next HOA meeting. The fight was just beginning, and I was ready. The weeks that followed Karen's arrest felt like a whirlwind. The fire was still smoldering in the back of my mind, but now, it was time for action. Karen may have believed her HOA throne was untouchable, but I was about to knock it down and replace it with something far better, something real. First, I received a letter from my insurance company. The claim had gone through, and I was getting a generous payout. Enough to cover the damages to the house and then some. But that wasn't the big win. No, the big win was what I'd been working on behind the scenes, the HOA itself. I had rallied my neighbors, many of whom had quietly hated Karen for years. They were the ones who dealt with the fines for the offensive garden gnomes. The ones who had their Christmas decorations condemned for not adhering to official HOA color schemes. They were ready for change. I was ready to lead them there. One evening, I walked into the HOA meeting with a stack of documents that could have sent any normal person into an early retirement. These weren't just legal papers, these were evidence. Everything Karen had ever done, her shady fines, the unnecessary rules, the blatant abuse of power, was there in black and white. And at the bottom of every page, my name was attached as the solution. The meeting room was packed. The usual faces were there, scowling, uncomfortable in their khaki pants and polo shirts, but Karen was conspicuously absent. She had been too busy to attend, which, of course, was code for too terrified of facing the consequences. I stood at the front of the room, confidently flipping through my papers. The audience was silent, their eyes on me as I prepared to take my shot. "Good evening, everyone," I began. "I know some of you are concerned about the current situation with the fire at my house." Some nodded. Karen's loyal followers, most of whom had the IQ of a melted candle, were still in denial, whispering to each other. But I knew their time was over. "But I want to be clear about one thing," I continued. "The fire wasn't an accident. It was a result of a party Karen decided to throw in my house without my permission. She broke every rule we're supposed to follow in this community. And now, she's the one who should face the consequences." A few people shifted in their seats, the energy in the room subtly changing. I clicked my remote, and a picture of the destroyed house popped up on the screen behind me. "This," I said, pointing to the image of my charred home, "is what happens when someone ignores the very rules they claim to uphold. This is Karen's legacy." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. I pressed on. "But it doesn't end there. I've compiled a full list of her abuses as HOA president. The fines, the harassment, the countless personal vendettas. I'm not the only one here who's been the target of her nonsense. Karen's supporters fidgeted nervously, but I could see their resolve starting to crack. The truth was louder than any excuse they could offer. I'm proposing a vote tonight, I said, my voice firm. It's time we voted Karen out of office. She's done enough damage. And I'm ready to step up and make sure this community is run with respect and fairness, not fear. The room went quiet. Then, slowly, people started nodding. One by one, they raised their hands. Yes, said Mike from next door. Karen doesn't deserve to be in charge anymore. I vote for you, man. I second that, said Mrs. Lee from down the block. Let's put an end to her tyranny. More votes followed. The tide was turning. Karen's supporters, the few who remained, were now fighting a losing battle. They raised objections, but it was clear no one was listening anymore. The final vote was unanimous. Karen was out. I was in. The room erupted into applause. People I barely knew were slapping me on the back, shaking my hand, congratulating me. I had done it. I had taken down the dictator and saved the neighborhood from her clutches. As I walked out of the meeting, the sense of victory was overwhelming. But it was only the beginning. Back at home, as I surveyed the wreckage that used to be my house, I couldn't help but smile. The flames had done their job, not just in destroying the structure, but in destroying Karen's reign over this community. Now, it was time for a new chapter. A chapter where the rules would be fair, the fines reasonable, and the neighborhood peaceful once again. But this time, I would be in charge. And Karen? Well, she was about to learn that messing with the wrong person came with consequences. Her own downfall had been her biggest mistake. I leaned back in my chair and looked out at the neighborhood. It was mine now. And no one, not even Karen, was going to ruin that. Like and subscribe for more videos like this.